World. It's 7 o'clock, so the slightly earlier time this week for Let's Kill Twitter, the show that aims to detox your timeline with the art of conversation. Luckily, as you know, I don't do that alone, and joining me tonight will be comedian and scientist Robyn Perkins. But before I introduce Robyn, just a little bit of obligatory housekeeping. If you're watching us live, then you'll be doing that on one of YouTube, Facebook Live or Twitch, which I kind of just saying for my own information so I don't forget. You can watch the show afterwards if you go to YouTube or Facebook Live. The stream will be there to look at. So please do that if you've missed any part of tonight's show, or obviously if there's anyone else you think would like to watch the show, please do direct them there. The other obvious thing that I have to tell you is to get the most out of the show, please do follow us at LKT Zoom, which is our Twitter account. During the show, if you're watching us live, you'll be able to ask questions via that, or make comments, or share your own favourite tweets. For the rest of the time, that's where we share clips. That's where news of the latest shows will be, and also we'll tweet the cream of the crop of tweets most of the time. Anyway, we do our best to curate the best of Twitter. There's been a lot going on Twitter this week that, quite honestly, I've not been very minded to retweet, but I think we've got a sort of essence of it. And certainly Robyn's tweets tonight will tackle some of the sort of thornier issues. So that's very handy to get stuck into those. Let me introduce Robyn to you. Robyn is a comedian, obviously, as many of you will already know, but Robyn's worn many hats. She's been a former landscape architect working on the Rio Olympic Park, a former marine biologist, and still works with a charity called Ocean Matters. As a comedian, she had an excellent year in 2019, winning the Sydney Fringe Comedy Award, and also scoring a treasured 4 stars from Chortle for her Fringe show. That, of course, is the last time the Fringe was running until this year. It's sort of back on in some form. And in June 2020, Robyn started an online comedy show called Comedy for the Curious, which, as the title suggests, is a comedy show for those with curious minds. It's a weekly show, and it's on Sundays at 8:30, so you can watch it more or less straight after this show, which would be great. Please do that. And the plan is for the show to go live in Hove in September. So there's a nice bit of symmetry, I'll just quickly say, with LKT as well, with Let's Kill Twitter, because we started November last year, and we also plan to go live. It won't be in Hove, it won't be in September, but it will be somewhere in the southeast in the autumn, so do watch out for that. And lastly, I should say about Robyn that she played water polo for the UK British National League, which is not something I read every day. And I think there's quite a lot of there to be very curious about. So please welcome Robyn Perkins. Hello.
Hi.
Hi,
Hello.
how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay. It's obviously been a bit of a rain day, which has been interesting.
Yeah.
But pretty, good. I'm very energised by the show. Just reading your biography is enough to sort of, keep you on your toes. Will keep me on my toes. What's the sort of timeline of all of those things, Robyn? Take us through it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, also when you were reading, I was just thinking, wow, that you're making me sound really great. That's fantastic. Yeah, so I mean, from age 5, I wanted to be a marine biologist. So I kind of did everything my whole life to do that, and everything was all science-based. And then it was in my 20s that I switched professions, and then did architecture and then landscape architecture, and then moved to the UK in 2008 to work for a firm out here, and then worked on, I think the last thing I worked on was the Rio Olympics, and that was I worked on was 2012, 13. I worked on was 2012.
That's the traditional heckling from Twitch that I mentioned earlier. So I must get if I don't get that laptop back, I'm going to go mad. So go on. So working on the Olympics, what was your experience of doing that?
So I just basically designing the park. And so the bit, I mean, I worked on the competition and the master plan as well. And then when we won, I was focusing on, do you know the part of the Olympic Park that, almost, looks, like a sperm? It's like, with like
I feel like I should.
I know, like
say.
if you Google it, like you'd probably not see it, but then if you see a plan of it, you're like, oh no, that looks like a sperm. Um,
Right, I'm just
but yeah,
making a quick note for a bit of googling afterwards.
but yeah, it's basically the main Olympic park where they had water polo. I believe swimming was there as well. Tennis, gymnastics, boxing, wrestling, and the live site. And then the bit that was mine really was the waterfront park. However, I don't know if they ever built that.
You're kidding? Or even to this day?
Yeah, well, so there's several. When you do an Olympic plan, you'll have like the plan for the Olympics, and then you'll have a transition time, and then you have the legacy plan, which is basically what happens where you want to be 10 years after the Olympics. So
Okay.
for a lot of Olympic park designs, they're looking at like one of the when cities go into bid for the Olympics, they want to show like how the Olympics will improve their city. So that's
So
like a
they
big
literally
part
get
of it.
asked the question, where do you see yourself in 10 years' time then?
Yeah, exactly. And the city's like, well, with a roof over my head, which let's be honest, halfway through the pandemic, I didn't know if that was going to be my case. So,
Well, how was your pandemic?
I was all right. It was actually I'm making it sound worse than it was. I mean, the first 2 weeks, my girlfriend keeps reminding me how much of a breakdown I was having, and I've just kind of blocked that out of my memory. Um,
Wow, you got out of the way really early on.
Yeah, well, I think what happened is because I run a weekly just straight stand up night in South London, and we kind of put it out there, and people were like, "Yes, we want to watch comedy online." So within a month, we started running online gigs, and I think that kind of helped.
Is that
So
Laugh Train Home? Yeah,
yeah,
it's still,
yeah,
that's
left
still
or
going.
home.
That's brilliant. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Are you back in the world doing that live now then?
yeah, we didn't actually last very long online because the first couple shows we did had so many technical difficulties that we lost all of our audience. So it is no, it was rough, but it's fine. Comedy for the Curious came out of that, so it's good. But we've been back at in Clapham Junction since May 19th and are running weekly, so going strong, which is good.
Good stuff.
So
Excellent. Where's the venue for that?
So it's called the Four Thieves. It's in Battersea in Clapham Junction, or about a 5 minute walk from Clapham Junction, right on Lavender Hill. It has a long comedy history. So it was the first ever Jongleurs. And then
Oh
I think
gosh, right.
Highlight ran there, 99 ran there. And then there's no comedy for a while. And then I started running it again.
Oh, that's
So.
really. So you're pretty busy, really.
Yeah, I mean so comedy for the curious, which is basically every show has a different theme, and I start every show with like 15 to 20 minutes of science comedy, and then the rest of it is not as sciency. But because of that, when we were really doing it weekly, I was researching and writing 15 to 20 minutes every week on the subject, which was
Right. Okay.
a lot
That's a lot.
because it was all these things like I have a scientific mind and I think that way, but I don't know, the neuroscience behind where you get your personality from. Like that's just not something that I know. So it
I.
was intense actually for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, still looking for mine, but yeah,
Yeah.
no, actually that does lead neatly onto so one of the things on your Twitter bio, actually, in fact, let's show everyone you follow Robyn. There's a ticker going across our heads which has your
Oh,
Twitter bio
nice.
as well, but also uh, obviously makes sense to show the crowds that you can follow Robyn at Robyn H Perkins. And on your bio, you mentioned, now tell me if I'm pronouncing this right, that you're a big, is it amygdala fan? Is it
Amygdala.
amygdala, that's the one.
Yes.
Now, I
Oh.
do remember, and obviously I want you to venture forth onto this in a moment, but I do remember watching this, I think it was something on a BBC online, and it went into, I think it's the amygdala, is it like some kind of almond-sized part of the brain, almond-shaped part of the brain that kind of determines whether you're happy or not, essentially?
So, and you can see on my
Oh, there it is.
Twitter
Yeah.
bio the little photo of the almond-shaped amygdala. So the thing that I love the amygdala so much, and the reason why is because it has so many roles, but it plays a huge role in your emotions. So, I think the amygdala is famous for fear in your fight or flight. And so I've
Right.
also, on a side note, have a bunch of like mugs and coasters and stickers that rebrand phrases for the amygdala. So that's the image at the top of my Twitter feed actually says, "You scared the amygdala out of me." Which is because it's responsible for fear. It's also responsible for your sex drive. So I have another one that is, "You are so thinking with your amygdala," and is responsible for love as well. So there's "I love you with all of my amygdala." But yeah, it's the amygdala does so many things, and it's like fear is a massive one, but it's also present in anxiety, happiness, your general emotions, mating, selection, sex drive, and also taps into a bit of your memory of fear as well.
Now, just to say, we've lost. Well, I've lost you moving, as it were. We were doing quite well. Oh, there we
Uh,
go. There we go. Fantastic, brilliant.
so
Thanks
I
for
don't
that.
know why that is. I
I
am
don't.
so
Yeah.
confused. This has never happened before. It's I feel like we should have a sign every time that happens, like touch your left ear, and I'll just switch my
You
camera
need a
on and off.
disclaimer. Yeah, you need a disclaimer. Set up a ticker. You can have a disclaimer running on the screen. So it's got quite a lot of functions, and that is a lot
Yes.
to put on, which I think is relative in relative terms. It's quite a small part of the brain, isn't it? Or
It is,
yeah.
and it's. I mean, and humans aren't the only ones who have amygdala. It's in like the like if you were to, it's like in there, like in the. Actually, hold on, I got a. So I have a brain. Actually, I have a bigger brain behind me. It's like I think it's somewhere in there. It's in that part of the
Okay.
brain.
You're, oh,
Yeah,
there we go. You're back again. Back in the room.
in the room.
What I suppose. So what I'm curious. I'm sure that hopefully the question will be in other people's minds. How do you? Is there such a way of cultivating a healthy amygdala? You know, is it the usual things? Exercise, good food, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there is. So, well, I'll tell you a story about what. So, when I was doing my first hour in Edinburgh, that was called 10,000 Decisions, and I wanted to know the science of decision making. And so I found this neuroscientist and contacted her and took her out to coffee and basically asked her a bunch of questions. Who said that how you make a decision is made up of your prefrontal cortex and your amygdala. And so the prefrontal cortex is like the logical part of your brain. That's like up here, the bit like the cortex, which humans have in a lot of logical thinking. And then the amygdala, which is the emotional part of your brain. And the connection between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex is quite important. And so when you are overly anxious or not happy or stressed out, it's because you need to clarify that connection between your amygdala and your prefrontal cortex. And a good way to do that is through meditation
Okay,
as
check.
well. I know. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't meditate, but I should.
Oh,
Um, but yeah, it's a lot of times if you have a stressed out amygdala, then you find it more difficult to make decisions as well. So,
I've so been there. Yeah. Okay.
yep.
I'm hearing this loud and clear. I have to say. Okay, that's good. That's good to know. Clearing the path to the amygdala just sounds like kind of some kind of buffering process, doesn't
Yeah.
it? Which is what we sort of need with the video. We are sort of getting there in sort of mini leaps and bounds. Uh,
Every so often, I'll just turn my camera off and on to reset it.
that's fine. We're getting there. So yes, that's right. 10,000 decisions. I remember talking to you about that. But and then you also did a show about dating, didn't you? Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so
Mating
was
selection.
that was a sort of science, the science of dating, I think, essentially, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, so the whole show in and of itself was kind of an experiment, because in Edinburgh 2018, I went on a dating show that was like blind date but live, and only you could see the people, and I had such a stressful experience on that show that it then led me to investigate the science and the evolution of morality, but also the science of dating. And the whole show basically gives you a bit of background, but then tells the story of what happened on that night. And at 4 points in time throughout me telling you the story, I ask the audience to vote what they would do if they were in my position with the information that they had.
Oh,
And
okay.
then the votes are basically factored or counted live during the show. And so every show is different as well.
And that sounds like it could be quite. I mean, not to burden you with more shows or online shows, but it sounds like it could be quite a good online show, actually.
I haven't done it yet, but I probably should. I hadn't. I mean, I really should actually, because it would actually be a lot easier to count the votes online as well, because everyone's already plugged into the internet. Um, but I don't know why I didn't do that online yet. But there's still time. I will do it.
Yeah, I'll just add it to your list. I mean, was there anything that came out of it that kind of was a sort of revelatory about sort of dating, revelatory about sort of like these are the hard and fast rules? I mean, people talk about obviously relationships very much based on values, but that's not something that you can immediately encounter in sort of 3 days. There must there must be some sort of determinism going on. I mean, obviously the way apps work, it's so much about some kind of facial response, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it is. There's so much cognitive bias in the way that we experience life and images. The first image you see, there's so much behind that. Now, I was looking more into the morality side of things, and I think the most interesting thing that came out of the research that I had done on the show was actually looking at why morality exists, and also the difference between like the right thing and the moral thing to do. Because evolutionarily, um, morals evolved because humans survive better in a community. And it's the same reason why love evolved as well. It's basically human babies are high maintenance. So you can't just like give birth, stick them out into the wild and have them survive. Like they stick around for like decades before they can actually move out. And
That sounds
because
very
of
much the
that,
reverse of helicopter parenting, that's for sure.
yeah, exactly. I know. But if you look at other animals like harp seals, 12 days out of there, done.
By the
And
way,
so,
we've got on the screen. You're now stuck in air quotes.
oh no. Okay,
Hang
here
on,
we
there
go.
you go.
Here we go. I'm back. So, no, I'm just gonna do, no. Anyway, yeah. So basically, because human babies are so hard, we want to love, or not want to love. That's why love evolved is basically to keep more people around, but also you love your kid because if you didn't love your kid, you would not stick around to take care of it
Yeah.
is simply how it works. And so for the same reason of morality, the reason why we have morals is because and shame for that reason, actually, is that we want to be accepted into a group, because if you are in a community and if you're in a group, it's just frankly easier to survive. Historically,
Mm.
so like millions of years ago. And what's interesting about that is that actually, when it comes to doing the moral thing, it's actually not what would be the right thing, but it's what your community thinks you should do.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And that is quite an interesting flip. And that relates to the show because basically, what I thought the right thing for me to do on the dating show was not what the audience wanted me to do. And then I had a moral dilemma going, okay, well, if the point of me doing this show is to hand out flyers at the end of it so that people will come to my show, then I want to do like if that's my survival in that community, then I need to do what the audience wants me to do, not the right thing.
See, what's fascinating there is that you basically did that show and all that research off the back of a sort of a not great dating experience, whereas maybe
Yeah.
people would just go out and get pissed after that, I think, probably. So that's kudos.
I mean, that's what comedians do. Honestly, I was in shock for about 10 minutes. I left the gig and I was like, what just happened? Exactly what you said. I was like, I need a drink. And I just then within probably about 10 minutes, I just went, well, that's next year's show.
Yeah, that's true.
And-
That is the comedian's reflex, isn't it? Actually,
yeah.
that is true. So just right before we just get stuck in the streets, comedy for the curious. You're going to do it live in Hove. Are you based down in that area then?
No, I'm in
Ah,
London. I just found a room in a comedy club that I really liked, and it seems really like it could be a great home for it. So it's the Secret Comedy Club at Artista Cafe. So if anybody is local to there, but if you're not local to there, we are maintaining weekly online at 8:30
Great.
p.m. So
The
so we
online
have
presence.
an international audience already. So that's why we're sticking to weekly.
I just thought I'd check because we had Simon Evans on the show last week, and he actually did it from the streets of Hope, walking round when he's fine. Somehow it worked. Weirdly better connection as well. So I hate to say
Wow,
that.
I know. Meanwhile, I'm just gonna switch my video off and on again just to refresh
If
it.
in doubt, switch it on and off. So look, you've chosen a clutch of tweets, and I picked up a couple off the back of those actually afterwards, and I'm not quite sure where to start because, rightly, I think you've tucked into some difficult subjects because there seem to be plenty of difficult subjects around.
I
Um,
know.
yeah. So I'm sort of thinking, well, actually, I'll tell you what, because something I don't think I've really been that connected to yet is the Olympics. So why don't we start with the Olympics? Do you want to do these three individually, or do you want to do them sort of
Sure.
one by
Yeah,
one?
we can do them individually.
So
Yeah, they're all kind of because they are kind of three separate Olympic related tweets.
totally. So
So
if you sort of read each one out, and then we'll go if that's okay, so we can get your dulcet tones on the podcast. Um,
sure. Oh gosh, now I'm worried that I'm not going to pronounce something well. All right. So quite interesting. After the breakup of the Soviet Union, Lithuania could not afford to send its basketball team to the 1992 Olympics. The Grateful Dead offered to sponsor the team if they played in tie-dyed uniforms. They wore these shirts on the podium when taking home the bronze.
that's fantastic. And
Yeah.
then
Which oh, and then
well,
the next
actually,
one.
let's do we'll do them all three. Yeah.
Athletes should be allowed to take drugs before competing in the Olympics as long as they don't get to choose the drug. Which,
And then you picked out.
yes.
Yeah. So I don't, actually vaguely I think I might have seen what happened here, but yeah, do explain.
A dominant win for USA water polo in their first game at the Tokyo Olympics, where the image shows that they beat Japan 25-4, which for a few short hours was the highest score in a women's water polo team
Oh really?
game.
Has it's
Yeah.
been surpassed already?
Yeah, it has. I believe. Oh, who was it? I think it was Spain. Maybe or Australia. Somebody else got 29 goals. Just a few hours after that.
Goodness me. So have you been following it at all? I haven't really been following it at all.
I mean, yeah, no. So I was gigging in Brighton yesterday and today. So all the water polo started yesterday. And so I've kind of been trying to check scores and see them where they were at. But I wanted to put in a water polo tweet because I love water polo. That's it. I mean, it did say when I did play for the British National
That's
League.
right.
However, I did not play in the first division. The best I ever made it was to the second division. So it does make me sound like I'm way better than I am. But I did play it. I'm passionate about it. And it was exciting to see that they're still doing well, which is good.
I mean, it's fairly, it's quite a niche sport in the sense. So if you're playing water polo, you can sort of be, you know that you're in a sort of percentile, very small percentile of the population. But
Although, did you know that water polo was in the first? It was either the first or second modern Olympic Games. It was one of the first 5 sports to be in the Olympic Games, the modern Olympic
right.
Games, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, and so what's happening now? I mean, we're 3 days into. I don't know how many days we're into it. Really, I don't know the thing is. I've totally exhausted my watching because I watched all the Euro. Every time there's an international football competition, I try and watch every game. So by the time, so if Wimbledon's on, Wimbledon usually gets pushed to the side of the plate almost in football years, and then anything else coming afterwards is just sort of, I don't know. I'm sort of exhausted by that point, but.
I find some of the sports. I mean, if you are a football fan, I can understand how you would be exhausted. I think it's interesting, like skateboarding. It's the first year that it's in the Olympics, so that's been really exciting to actually see skateboarding in the Olympics as a sport. I am partial to water polo because I played, and I know the club team that I played for in the UK, the men's team has actually a lot of guys that played on the Olympic team, and so and I am good friends with one of the commentators of Olympics as well. So I have a bigger connection with them. In fact, one of the referees at the London Water Polo Olympics in a National League game gave me a red card. So there's that.
I hope you framed it. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't actually give you a card. They do give you a letter, though, and it's like, you shall not play for a very long time.
It's a bit more polite.
Yeah.
How are the USA still going strong in the water polo then?
Yeah, they are pretty dominant in water polo. Is therefore a I can't say, so a tweet just popped up. Are you never mind?
No, hang on. Robyn has played water polo, and therefore you're a badass. Yeah,
I am.
Badass.
Do you know? I thank you very much, Martin. I appreciate that. I have. I broke a girl's finger once while playing water polo.
Wow. Okay. Steady on.
Yeah.
I mean,
I am a badass. Yeah.
Condoning violence in sport.
I'm not kidding. It was not my fault. Okay. Yeah.
Actually, we mentioned violence in sport, but I know probably a bit weird actually doing those as a trio because they're so different parts of the Olympics. But there's a nice gag here from the account. So Jacob has his hat on, but
Jacob Hatton is a comedian that I know. I just because I thought also the idea was I was scrolling through my Twitter feed and I saw it and I was like, well done.
Yeah, no, that's I do like. Yeah, I mean, I do like that kind of. We had that idea of a level playing field that if athletes were all going to end up taking drugs, then they should all just take drugs. But obviously, taking different ones that's quite a lot of subsections for potential Olympic events. Actually, the javelin may be excluded.
Oh my gosh, no, yeah.
But this is a find. I mean, this one here, the QI one, that's quite a find. I don't know. I'm sure that must have been out there in the world.
I'm sure it was
that on the rostrum, you know.
Yeah, I read that, and then I was like, "Is that true?" So of course I just looked it up, and it was absolutely true. And then one of the main players, because how it happened was that the Lithuanian team or that area had amazing players, and so a lot of them were trying to be recruited to the US to play professionally. And then when they became part of the USSR, they were not allowed out to play, and so they didn't actually go over. And then when they separated, became Lithuania and couldn't afford it. What happened was one of the recruiters from the States was keeping in touch with, I think, one of the coaches in Lithuania. They had messaged about it, and so then all of a sudden there's this grassroots campaign to raise money for the Lithuanian team so that they could go, and then a reporter picked it up, and then the PR guy from the Grateful Dead read it, and all of them were like, we're all about freedom and getting people freedom, and then paid for them, gave a massive donation. So I don't know if they were required to wear the tie-dyed uniforms. That's the only thing that I couldn't verify, but they did.
Wow.
And they did win bronze.
And that's 92, so that was Barcelona, I think. A long time ago, goodness me. But it's funny because that T-shirt is almost perfect for the time because it's so Stone Roses. It's like they've been out for a night in sort of Manchester club or something. But
yeah,
that's a great morsel. And on the drugs one, there haven't been any. Are we clear of any drug scandals as far as you know at the moment?
Well, there is. So I thought that was in reference to the U.S. runner who was not allowed to go to Tokyo because she had THC in her system. But then there have been other Olympic players that have come out going CBD is actually quite like integrated into my Olympic training program. And so there seems like there was just a lot of controversy of going, well, wait a minute, is that a double standard if one of them has CBD? And that's totally fine, but THC is not okay because we're all working off of a cannabis plant. And also the soccer player Megan Rapinoe, I believe is how you Rapinoe. Sorry, I'm
yeah. That's
horrible
right.
at
Yeah,
names.
yeah.
I'm actually gonna get banned off Twitter for mispronouncing her name. Was the one who was saying that CBD is actually quite integrated into their training. So there was a lot of, it seemed like a double standard. A lot of people were saying that it was because she was black as well, and that it was a race thing, and that all of a sudden there's a double standard between THC and CBD. So I think that is where that tweet
Oh,
comes
I
from.
see. Yeah. Okay. Gosh. All right.
So quite a, I mean, a funny tweet, but also in reference to a very serious
Yeah,
topic.
yeah, no, totally. I did. Yeah, I wondered if, because I mean, the Olympics is sort of littered with doping and drugs sort of shenanigans. But I didn't realise. And this is almost like one for the. I mean, CBD just sort of brings it really up to date, I suppose. That
Yeah,
it's going to be a problematic area or grey area, I suppose. You know.
it is, and it's one of those. I mean, like you're also sitting there going, THC is not like on one hand you're going, that's actually not gonna. That's no, and pot was never considered a drug enhancing, performance enhancing drug, right? You know,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
like
yeah,
smokes a joint and is like, you know what I want to do? Run a marathon. It's just, it's
yeah.
not one of those. And so I think there needs to be more clarification, but also to the point where so many areas in the States have marijuana like are legal, but also recreationally legal. So then at that point in time, where is the line drawn? And is that whole thing just a bunch of crap and racist? So
I mean, yeah. I mean, well, I mean, the thing is, you've got to, there must be, there's got to be a sort of list drawn up of what you can and
yeah.
what you can't have. But, um, uh, I mean, where and how does that? Is it in terms of how it breaks down in sort of in the body in terms of how that might be different? Is it different on a case by case basis, or can you not just be prescriptive and say, look, this is banned and this isn't?
Yeah, I mean, it's because, I mean, there's nothing. If you look at the chemical reactions of THC in your brain, so it basically locks into your endocannabinoid system, and so it affects THC affects about a ton of different areas of the brain, but they are all of the effects that it has are not performance enhancing. And so there are obviously like a lot of medical benefits to it in terms
Mm,
of pain relief. There's a lot of benefits with Parkinson's and glaucoma. Um, but most of, if you are not seeking medical treatment, a lot of it has to do with reducing anxiety and reduces motivation. I mean, if anything, Olympic athletes who have THC in their system should be applauded. Um, for,
yeah, it's almost like a handicap in golf or something like
yeah,
that. Yeah,
exactly,
right.
exactly.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm glad we delved into that. I mean, I tried to take those as a bit of a triple jump of tweets, but they're so individual, aren't they?
Yeah. I
They're
will
really
say
good
I
tweets.
gave you way more tweets that I probably should have, and
Oh.
I think it's because my amygdala is a bit stressed out right now, and I'm having decision making issues.
Oh no, it's
So
fine. You absolutely did it within the guidelines. You did it within the IOC
okay,
guidelines. I'm just thinking one thing that we probably can do as a kind of hop, skip, and a jump is the COVID situation. Oh God, honestly, this just driving me totally nuts. The grandstanding on this, I mean, is sometimes it makes Twitter unreadable in terms of
yeah,
what people are saying, and sometimes that comes from all sides. But so in this case, the sort of the fuel to the fire is Sajid Javid's tweet. So he's saying full recovery from COVID a week after testing positive. Symptoms were very mild thanks to amazing vaccines. Please, if you haven't yet, get your jab as we learn to live with rather than cower from this virus. So he has now subsequently backtracked and apologised from this, but not without getting some stick, as you might imagine, on this. Do you want me to? Shall I carry on reading these, or do you want to read these? Or I don't mind. To be honest.
I it's up to you. Whatever,
Well, let's
whatever you think.
Well, let's. Oh, there we go. Let's rattle through.
I was
So,
just refreshing, just doing a little
just yeah,
buffer.
I'll let you refresh while I read it. So Yvette Cooper quote tweeted Sajid Javid to say 129,000 people who died didn't cower, they fought for their lives. Frontline workers didn't cower, they kept calm and carried on. Millions in lockdown didn't cower, they followed your rules and made sacrifices for others. Glad you've recovered, but please never treat illness as a weakness. And then Paul Sinner, you picked up Paul Sinner's tweet on this as well. I've decided I'm not going to cower from Parkinson's. That will show it. So I think essentially what we've got here is this: the tone seemed to go way back into the kind of sort of almost World War II territory that we had at the beginning of this pandemic, and I think it was one of the things that Emily Maitlis did in her Newsnight intro, which was subsequently sort of censured for being a little bit unbalanced, which, that's an arguable case. But the point I'm making is that there was a kind of mentality at the beginning that, we'll fight it on the beaches, which actually was probably the best way to avoid it, was to go to the beaches. But, yeah, and here we are. We're in this sort of, enough sort of culture war classic with all of this, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that's probably where the show got its title from and where you guys are coming from. But on one hand, it is I'm sure there wasn't a malicious intent behind the tweet, the original tweet.
Yeah.
However, it's one of those things where every word that you put on, especially the more present you are and the more prolific, what do you say, more famous you are, the more people that follow you on Twitter, the more careful you need to use about your words. And again, I'm sure it didn't come from a malicious point of view, but then you're going, at the same time, the notion of Yvette's tweet of going, glad you've recovered, but don't treat an illness as a weakness. I think that's a very important point, because a lot of times we are, especially, and I know COVID is not a mental health issue, but there is like a lot of looking down on people with illnesses and as weaknesses, and that's not
certainly
how
long
we need
COVID,
to change the way we're looking at it.
I mean, long COVID definitely seems to have a mental health
yes, yeah,
side to it.
Oh, they go hand in hand. I was just saying.
Strictly speaking,
COVID is a real virus. It's
Yes.
not. It is a physical. Like you can. It's a. I'm gonna see. I'm doing it myself. It's a physical virus, is what I'm saying.
Actually, that's important. That is an important thing to say, because there was a edition of Newsnight. I think it was last week. And it seems like one of the most sort of interesting pieces of television I'd seen in a while. It had one sociologist on it, which I think was a Professor Dingwall, and then there's a Professor Baker from New Zealand. And essentially they were talking about long COVID. And what the Dingwall guy was saying that, we can maintain this sort of policy that we're now following because, we think long COVID is possibly an accumulation of various other things that are going on with people during this pandemic. And he didn't exactly say it was psychosomatic, but he certainly didn't put the emphasis on it. The guy from New Zealand was basically saying, listen, we wouldn't do this sort of herd immunity by the back door thing that you're doing. We're going to do it differently. We're not going to take any chances. And then Mark Urban, who was presenting that night, turned to the guy, the British guy, and sort of said, I hope you're right. It was a very telling moment. The contrast between the two approaches couldn't be sort of, more different,
Yeah. I mean, it's mental health is a very serious issue that's gone alongside COVID, and not just long COVID as well, but just, I think, because humans are so quick to adapt, and we are. That is the only reason why we are where we are and how we've evolved so quickly and can have the technology to have this conversation. But because of our adaptability, we, after a month of being in lockdown, all of a sudden this became the new normal, and you just start functioning without thinking about it, but also not really taking into account all of the things that have drastically changed in our life, and looking at happiness as well, because that's what the topic that we did for Comedy for the Curious last week was happiness. And one of the number one determinants in happiness, which is eudaimonic happiness, is related to mental health as well, but it's about connections with people, and it's about relationships with people. And so if you are cutting off those relationships with people, it is going to affect your mental health, and that is a very real thing. And I don't know if that just goes along with COVID. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I think it's obviously it's opened up into so many different. We've had to think about so many things. It's interesting how the whole Brexit scenario, we almost had to become kind of lawyers by the back door to sort of keep up with it almost. And now, we've had a pandemic, and because of social media, people have been sort of schooled in decisions and quandaries that perhaps otherwise wouldn't necessarily have confronted before. I mean, not necessarily in a good way either, because Twitter is, like any social media, prone to sort of some, if it's disinformation or some highly accented information, should we say. I mean, one of the things I picked up after you chose those tweets was saying, what's Martin saying here? It's very hard to experience debilitating fatigue, muscle aches and brain fog without there being a cost mentally. Yes, it's anyone with ME/CFS could tell you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so when you pick those tweets out, I had a quick look at I will also say, in response to what Martin said as well, let's 100%. There is so much overlap between, there are so many real physiological effects of. I think a lot of times we separate out ME having its physical, I'd say, symptoms, and experiencing mass fatigue, and then the mental health side of it. But there's so much overlap because there's so much physiological effects to having mental health or struggling with mental health. So it is, I think it's one and the same. It is the same. Yeah.
It's the same. Sorry, I just wanted to acknowledge that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, and one of the things you said as well about Sajid Javid's tweet was that he didn't think it was any malice. Now he has apologised, but as ever, there's always the apology hasn't necessarily been well received in all areas. So the Brexit sort of Femi, sort of well known for his sort of anti-Brexit campaigning and a regular across a number of TV shows. Yes, Jeremy Vine. Let's mention it again because I watch Jeremy Vine every day, and it's now become a theme of the show that I confess that I just don't know why. But he's sort of criticised this, the bravado of the initial tweet, and then Catherine Russell, who's an actress, I believe, she's come back and sort of said, look, I think it's important to accept apologies, otherwise you make it very difficult for anyone to ever admit they were wrong. But you don't get that kind of you don't really get that kind of forgiveness on Twitter, it has to be said. But I do like that people point it out. I mean, Sajid Javid's had criticism in other areas for actually making the apology in the first place. That should be sticking to his guns, say some people. But
I think if you look at his apologies, if you scroll up a bit, sorry, it was. I think his apology kind of explains the way that I can imagine he meant the text to sound. I don't think he was, and maybe I'm being too optimistic or giving him too much credit, but I think, I going back on it, reading that apology, going, yeah, I can understand how you tried to express gratitude towards the vaccines and going, all right, trying to basically go, guys, let's get the vaccine. Come on, vaccines are good. And I do, it was obviously a poor word choice, but, again, reading that apology, I would again reiterate the fact that I don't think it was said maliciously. And I just think he just didn't think it through.
Yeah.
But
I mean, in all of this, tone has been everything, really, hasn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, then that's a big issue when you're on Twitter. is trying to. There's so many ways you can interpret tone through text, which is hard. I text people this stuff all the time, and they just do not take it the way that I should.
Yeah, well, do you use emojis on top of that to sort of try and?
I do. I
Yeah.
do try to. I mean, to be honest, it's actually why I don't tweet as much as I should, because I think a lot of being an American living in the UK as well, there is a huge cultural difference between the language of Americans and Brits, and it's not something that is expected because we speak English. So it's like so a lot of times tone can be taken the wrong way. And yep, and
Yeah.
my good British friends are like that. The ones that know me are like, "Yep, that's just Robyn being British or being American. That's fine." And then sometimes I have to like actually either get my British girlfriend to proofread my texts for me, or
Social media
write it and then go
consultant and
bang it.
partner. Yeah.
I know, especially when I'm in admin mode, it's awful if I'm just like, "You this date," and people are like, "Hello, Robyn, how are you?"
Yeah, I know. I mean, I'm quite a fan of cutting to the chase myself, but people do love that finesse occasionally, don't they?
Yep.
They're like, yeah. And you also chose one, another sort of, obviously COVID related from the parody Boris Johnson account.
Mm,
So I don't know why people object to self isolating. I'm quite enjoying myself. Hashtag Freedom Day, and then
yeah.
a picture of checkers.
Which, I mean, and obviously this is in reference to both Freedom Day, but also,
A
um,
pandemic.
yeah, well, yes, and whether or not Boris and Rishi were going to isolate as part of the the scheme of like that they
Mm.
are no longer chosen, randomly selected to be a part of. Just basically all of
The
those
get
things
out clause
boiled
thing.
into one.
Yeah. Oh God, I'd almost forgotten about that one. Yeah. I
Yeah,
think that happened just before the Cummings interview as well, which I tweeted so much about that. I'm not going to subject people to this time around, I don't think. But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, the pandemic as well has obviously brought its sort of truckload of logistical problems with it. It's certainly not out of the woods. Out of the
No.
woods, yeah. Um,
Yep.
so let's just quickly mention. Let's try to think. I had where is Ian's tweet? Ian Moore. So Ian Moore, stand-up comedian that performs over here but lives in France. I believe he's got a book out as well. I like this one. I picked this quick tip for anyone going on an anti-vax march today and looking to kick off. Avoid being recognised on CCTV by wearing a mask. So there's a handy
Oh,
tip for Ian for presumably next Saturday, when loads of people will actually protest about getting what they want. Well, more or less. Obviously, vaccine passports has given this whole thing a new life. So, I don't know.
yeah. I mean,
All I'm saying is
it's
Central London's very busy.
yep. I know. I know. This is hey, I was in Hove last night, so I didn't have to deal with it.
Oh yeah, it was last night, Saturday. I'm losing the thread of the week. So, right, it's time for me to be totally schooled now. I need to know what's going on. It's completely over to you for this one. I'm not even going to attempt to read it out.
I figured I would chuck in a science one just for fun.
Absolutely.
During cell division, two sets of chromosomes are separated. One set goes to each daughter cell, unless intracellular forces are out of whack. Then one daughter cell can get both sets and the other nothing. The mother cell clearly has a favorite. Which so in yeah, it's. Do you want me to explain meiosis to you?
God, well, I mean, what's the layman's explanation?
Basically, in cell reproduction, you have 26. You have your 23 chromosomes, or 46. Like they like yeah, the chromosomes, right? And so that's my impersonation of a chromosome. Yeah, they're like little X's. Anyway, so they replicate, and then separate so that each cell will have the same number of chromosomes, unless you're in meiosis, at which point it's a haploid. But so it's not clear if they were talking about mitosis or meiosis in here, which I feel like you're looking at judging by the look on your face, you don't care. So
I don't know. I'm just thinking how much this looks like a graphic equalizer stuck in a virus as a kind of
amazing.
Yeah.
All right, basically when cells reproduce, they basically duplicate their genetic code and then split it up. Right. So that each cell has equal amounts of, right. So if there's if you need 5 chromosomes to live, if you just split up 5 chromosomes, you'd have 2.5 in each cell. So instead you have 5 chromosomes, they become 10, and then they split and each cell has 5.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
With me, right? But humans have 26, but the maths is easier with 5. 23, not 26. 46, 23, don't worry. Anyway, the point is, so they should each go into the separate cells. So you can see the purple thing go into each one, and then all of a sudden it goes crazy and all the purple goes into one cell. And that means the other one has no genetic code.
Okay, all right, I've got you. Wasn't there, for some reason I'm reminded of this chromosome dance song, and I can't remember if it's a comedian's or whether it was some kind of kids science program or something, but there is some lyric stuck in my head about taking your partner by the hand, but it's actually sort of like a song about chromosomes, basically.
Oh, I don't know it. I need to look it up.
Anyway, if that's who knows, that might trigger someone's memory. So there we go. That's the science. That's the science part, as they used to say in the L'Oreal ads. Although I say that, but you also picked out. So I mean, obviously, I'm
looking at my tweets that I selected. They are all a lot darker and more serious than I thought.
They are quite, yeah. No.
Sorry about that. Should have just stuck with the Lithuanian basketball team. Called it a day. I mean.
Yeah, we got the light relief in right at the beginning. Actually, I just thought we'd sort of ease us into this.
Yeah.
But I think this was now. I'm assuming that this is a kind of very deliberate couple. So Brian Kahn, who is the editor of Eartha, obviously, which I haven't. I'm going to follow it now, so I'm going to get educated, so I can nerd out on that. He has picked up on the I think I saw this at the time when this fire was going on the Gulf of Mexico, the oil spill that was so saturated that I don't know how long it burned for, but it was a long time. The ocean is on fire is one of those things that you can type and it's true, and yet it doesn't feel believable. But the tweet that you've picked up below, is that sort of above, I should say. Is that sort of deliberately related to this? Or
yes, it is. It was kind of a reference of. I mean, that's kind of like an overall reference of we're ignoring a lot of science right now.
Yeah.
Maybe we shouldn't.
Well, what's right? So one of the problems of that has probably been, is the pandemic, isn't it? Really, in the sense that despite this success of the vaccine in terms of how quickly it was developed and all the rest of it, it's not. People aren't sort of standing. Well, people are applauding it, but then you've got, as the demonstration on Saturday showed, this kind of crazy call the cops literally backlash to. Well, I mean, in this one particular case, it was healthcare. Conflating what to do with healthcare workers with sort of Nazi Nuremberg trials. I mean, it's just time to go home when that sort of thing happens. But it's not just the antipathy directed towards Chris Whitty and all the rest of it. It's not an easy time for scientists, despite the fact that they're also completely in the spotlight.
Yeah, I mean it's tough because with the internet out there, there's so much. And the way that Google search engines work, it is so easy to put misinformation out there, wrong information, and then on top of that, if you are the second you start clicking on some of the misinformation, if that is what you are drawn to, then the Google search engines will reinforce that, and it's very much a rabbit hole, which is tough because there's a lot of times people are quoting sources that aren't real, and if you try to look them up, and because of that, it is very hard, I think, to distinguish the difference between something that is real and something that is fake.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate because there's no govern. It's not like you have a leader of the world who can stand up and go, okay, here's the thing. This thing, true. This thing, not true. This thing, true. Because people are, I mean, that is, oh, that wouldn't work. That would be a well, dictatorship, I would say, but at the same time, when it's information. But in terms of the vaccines, I know people are going, well, how did we develop that so quickly? It's because of demand, but also we've done vaccines before. And so I think it's looking at the logic of going, well, how could you possibly make a vaccine that quickly? Well, the first time you make eggs or an omelet, it's going to take you a lot longer than the 200th time that you've
I've
made
still
an
never
omelet.
done it,
You know, like it's so also the entire world got involved in this one. You know, there's a lot of brains going in there. So, I mean, it's I don't know. I guess I'm just passionate about I think misinformation is a much bigger issue, and it seems very hard to fight, especially with the internet.
Yeah, well, I mean, as you sort of hinted at earlier, the whole point about setting up Let's Kill Twitter was to kind of, it was sort of to take the edge off it as well. I mean, it's very double-edged in the sense of Let's Kill Twitter wasn't. Some people have been attracted to it by the idea of like, yeah, let's kind of get rid of it. And actually, it is very negative in many ways, and I've found it quite very negative over the last 2 weeks. But there is a sort of an addiction to it, and it comes from the capacity it has for reinforcing positive messages or for things which are silly and joyous. I mean, I should give it a little example.
I'm so sorry. I should have put in a lot more happy tweets. I mean,
well,
I
listen,
really messed this up.
I don't know. I mean, I like getting stuck into the sort of, no, not at all. I mean, there was one. Well, actually, there's a couple of. Let me go with I just love this as a sort of what do you call it, as a visual. It's no context. There's so many no context accounts going on. No context women's football, and it's just this just lovely scene of this, one of the women taking a swig from the water bottle and it having to be reversed. That's friendship. Yeah. Oh, and Nan, thank you, Martin. Oh, what would it? Nan bed. So Stuart Anthony, the actor. Yeah. I mean, it is amazing that the Nan bed. Obviously, there's the rhyming.
Is that actually bread?
I think it's fluffy. It's lovely, fluffy, spotted material that is.
Okay, because I was like, I love that. Little snack in bed, like.
It's a bit Moorish. I mean, I don't know whether you'd be able to get to sleep really in terms of.
Oh, but the amount of carbs after by the time you got down to
That's
your
true.
Collarbone, I feel like that would be enough that you'd go, straight to sleep.
Yeah, I guess so. Although you'd certainly wake up with some kind of sugary headache, I would imagine. But
Yeah, it's true. I
was trying.
What else?
And actually, honourable mentions to Joshua Eller. Just got a text from a friend about their birthday week celebrations. A week of celebrations. This person is turning 33. We must protest this attack on our freedom. And it is. I suppose perhaps I understand it more post-pandemic. But when you were, even before we sort of entered into this, I remember people's sort of celebrations just seemed to be sort of. It was all about going abroad, wasn't it? Apparently, it was all about going abroad and going on sort of big, sort of weekends to sort of Budapest or wherever it was.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I have a bit of I turned 40 this year, and I had a birthday week.
I think
totally
you're allowed.
did.
I think it's 40. I think you're allowed.
I know. I was trying to be responsible, so I had a bunch of small parties in my garden and not a single big one.
Yeah, that's a cunning plan, actually. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Birthdays during the pandemic era birthdays. So anyway, listen, we managed to get through all of the tweets, which is brilliant. I'm very pleased about that. And you are obviously going to be dashing off to do Comedy for the Curious. Who's on tonight? Because people watching this can obviously go almost straight on to, because it's on at 8:30, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So we'll be opening the Zoom room in about 10-15 minutes. But you can, we actually, today is all about accents, and we have Jen Brister and Greg Faulkner on. So it's going to be an excellent, excellent show. It's Comedy for the Curious. If you go, our Twitter is comedy_curious, and I believe our link tree is in our profile, although I am just checking right now that it is. Oh, well, no, there is a ticket link on comedy_curious. So if you want to come, you can get tickets to either watch the show in the Zoom or on YouTube. If you're in the Zoom, you get to anonymously take part in the game at the end. But we also understand some people prefer YouTube, where they are not heard.
where you
they
can
could
see,
be anonymous. You don't have
heard.
to have your video or camera on, I should say that. But we've started streaming to YouTube as well, because some people just prefer YouTube.
Yeah, that's just the way it is. That is the way it is. So, and then obviously, Laugh Train Home is back up and running as well. So, yeah, busy.
Yes. Every Wednesday at the Four Thieves in Battersea, and we are actually. I am monthly at the Honor Oak Pub as well, which is Southeast London. But the Jacob Hatton, the one who did the drug tweet, that's us. He also is running a new material night every Thursday that I am not there. So essentially, every Thursday we'll have Laugh Train Home at the Honor Oak Pub in Forest Hill.
Fantastic.
/ Honor Oak / Catford / Southeast London. So, yeah.
And did you say was... oh, no, that's right, because you're going to do the online presence for Comedy for the Curious is going to stay after you go live, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, we're going to stay online, but we will be live monthly in Hove, the third Thursday of the month. So.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
So, that's brilliant. So, we've finished on time as well. I think we've run out of luck with... you've frozen in a very... glasses. It's one of my favourite posts. Either that or that, basically. I sometimes practice my frozens. Quite a lot of portions of the show I look like I've frozen, but I'm just sort of listening intently. But it's really hard to tell the difference. I'm
back unfrozen now.
Yeah,
right?
you are. You totally are. So that's brilliant. Well, I'll just wrap up for the streamers. If you stay behind, Robbie, just for a couple of seconds, and I can just say proper goodbye. So that's the end of our show, folks. Thank you so much for watching. Obviously, please let people know that you can watch it again. The live show obviously has gone out, but you can watch it again on YouTube and Facebook Live. Please watch it on YouTube and follow and subscribe to us. Please do follow us at LKT Zoom. I have news of the next shows. So next Sunday, I can tell you that it will be running again 8 till 9, and that will be with Dominic Frisby. And I shall put out notifications for that. We will have clips from this show coming out as soon as possible, and I will put it on as a podcast as well very soon. It's been great. We really look forward to seeing you again. So all that remains to do is wave goodbye to the streamers. Cheers, folks.
Bye.
Take care.